the regular meeting of the Finance Committee for ReGen Monterey. It is 9:01, so I'll call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Director Delgado,
Here.
Director Shirley,
Here.
Director Blackwolder. We have a quorum.
Okay, great. Any public communications? Anyone online?
There is someone online, but I don't see any phone.
Okay, all right. We'll close public comments. Go to 4A, approve the Finance Committee minutes for May 7th, 2025. Bruce, any?
Move approval.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All right, so motion approves the minutes. All right, go to 4B and discuss the board feedback to guiding principles draft.
So, we have received comments on the two items within the guiding principles that we went ahead and put red line edits in there for your guys' preview. When we get to the rate policies of 80%, we want to deliver probably a 1 to 2 page slide deck that would represent the guiding principles, and especially this area of 80%. It used to be 80 to 100, and we continue to hear the questions around, well, what does that mean for the district? So what we want to do is put out a slide deck that shows the representation of where we're at today. Garth usually shares this in his financial report, which is the pie chart that shows our revenue streams coming from regional customers and member customers and scale customers. And so when we look at that percentage, it's about 46%, 48% regional customers, and about 52% range for the member agencies. So we're trying to elevate that up. And so we will be putting together a slide deck that just shows the concept. And when we look at the concept, we realize that we're not at 80%. And we also will realize that we're not in the best bargaining position because we cannot cover the full operational cost with only member agency revenue. So we want to really just show what that representation means. And we believe that there is a good interest for the organization to continue to evaluate external volume, which would represent that 20% range for the need of the organization. If we wanted to build something, if we wanted to build the next module or start developing the next module, we can bring in external volume to cover the compensation for some of the costs that we would absorb for a short period of time. So we will aspire to hit the 80% mark, knowing that we are not nowhere near the 80% at this time in Maine. So we would like to show where we're at today, where we'll be at a few years from now, where we're at 11 years from now, since we're looking at 2036 as a destination point to really come back and review our position on the guiding principles. But this was a question, 80 to 100. I think that, achieving 100 would be awesome. It just doesn't seem, it makes the best business cases when we could invoke our position to bring in external volume at a preferred pricing. In today's realm, we'll realize quickly when we look at item 4E that we're not in that best seat of bargaining position at this point yet we're trending and working and developing our position to become more strong, to take a better position on cost and volume that would come in here from regional customers. So we're working to exercise that muscle and put us in a better position to bargain in the future. And we also added the one item that came in from Supervisor Rube Askew, which is efforts shall be made to negotiate out of district contract rates comparable to member agency rates. It's a little bit contradictory of Supervisor Rube Askew's position was we want to keep low rates. I think what we want to do is increase those external rates so that our internal rates can stay down. So it's kind of a toggle position, but it's really doing what we want to do. the better we do at bargaining those external regional customers, the better our price will be at the gate. Right now, it's kind of flipped over on its side. Regional customers have a preferred rate over member customers, and I think with getting member agencies to fulfill that 80% desire, we can now flip that role where we, as members, are receiving a better rate than external volumes, because of position in bargaining regional volume coming into the area. So those were the changes that we had received. We had heard from Director Delgado, we had heard from Director Shirley, and we received the feedback from Director Rudasky as well. And these were the changes that we made. Our desire is to bring it back to the board and receive more comments from the entire board. And I don't think we need to finalize it yet. The team has the desire to continue to kick it around if there's still awarenesses around our position where we're at today. If that comes up, then we'll be prepared to share a little bit more of where our current position is, and thus creating the basis of where we want to be at in the future. David or Zoe, is there anything that you would like to add on to this item? I know that we've gone through several drafts already and several feedback from the board, and we've incorporated them. Just how are you guys feeling about it?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about it, the three of us. We're really interested in what you guys have to say. Hearing more feedback from the finance committee and the board, because this is a proposal that is kind of a philosophical approach for the organization, and so feedback from you all is very much desired.
But we're happy with the progress. The changes have influence change over the last guiding principles, but it is where we're at in today's time, and I would believe that our position wouldn't strongly change until we increase our position from the member direct contributions and into our revenue stream. And when we see that happen, we can start taking stronger positions with the externals and evaluating how we really slow down the pace of our gate rate. At this point, the gate rate is trying to achieve the goal of self-sustaining ourselves without external volume or reliance on 46% of external volume that we receive today, which is I think is too high at this point.
And you think that 20% difference is adequate?
I do, and I think if we create more resiliency, we can always go and change 80% to reflect the actual where we're at. But I think we're in the 50s, and 30% growth over an 11-year period is a big ask. I'm not sure we'll be there by 2036, and we will also represent the other contracts that exceed 2036. So we have 3 agreements that go to 2052, and we'll have to look at and evaluate those as well. But we put ourselves in that better bargaining position as we get closer to those dates. But we also recognize that they will represent still about 25% of the volume. So at the end of 2036, the best we can be is about 76% of that 80% goal.
And we did change the wording just very slightly on that, because initially we had written ensure and we had a range, but we changed that slightly to say aspire. So that would ideally help inform decision making as to when contract would be approved or not. But it's a little less hard and fast than the previous ensure that. So that kind of gives that little bit of flexibility that I think you might be asking about as it relates to 80 being like the bottom number, for example.
Yeah, because I think my question was always sort of like, why 80? And what's your case for that? Why not 70? Why not 85? So, but you're right, putting in sort of that flexibility of at least, I mean, this is something that we're shooting towards. It's not something hard and fast.
And those contracts are fixed, so we can run the math on the fixed agreements that we have. Yet there's still other components that I continue to say there's going to be attributes from the operational that will influence that a little bit, right? But when we just look strictly at agreements and what they represent today, and as they expire, what the position we gain as we move forward, is going upward, right? So we think it's about 25% for the green waste of San Jose. When 2036 arrives, so that's, we believe we will go from that 50, 55 to 75% range. Of into a member agency delivering the revenue it needs to provide the services we have today. Very close.
Yeah. And I think that word comparable efforts shall be made to negotiate out of district contract rates to be comparable to member agency rates. I mean, really, she's not saying equal. I'm assuming, right? It's that those regional contracts have increased enough so that we don't have to also keep raising our rates. It's sort of, yeah. I'm happy that's in there.
Yeah, and I think leaving guiding principles not finalized because we still have the waste item on 4E is challenge people of what we're writing in our guiding principles and the decision we're gonna make today.
Right.
Based on not being in the driver's seat of negotiating. So our negotiating strength is not quite where we want it to be at. So we're gonna compromise a little bit on where that rate is gonna be based on realizing the revenue need for the organization as well. So you're gonna get a little bit of conflicting emotions in today's meeting because we're building guiding principles to run for an 11-year period. Yet we have some decision making that occurs early in that 11 years where we haven't gained the momentum to be in a stronger bargaining position as an organization. So there is gonna be a little tether back and forth on emotions on why we want to enter into some of these agreements that lie in front of us still. Yeah. And I think at this point, we're just seeking any more feedback and maybe any guidance on our approach on delivering to the, this edit to the board, hearing more feedback, and then your guys' desire of when you guys would like us to bring a final version for approval, and then we can pull it out at any time you guys guide us to and saying, hey, that philosophy no longer fits in where we're at in today's time of business. So I think it's we've done a really good job around it. I think staff has put a lot of time and effort into it, a lot of reviews, a lot of why does that make sense? And we just wanted to be very seeking of feedback so that we can be pretty close to where we want to be at and then make edits as we need to in the future. Again, I think reminder on these guiding principles were in effect since 2005 or
One
more.
of the dates.
So it was time for them to be revisited and to make sure that decision making today was in alignment with our principles that we want to be following as an organization, whether it's us here at this table or future representatives that would represent the organization as well, having the same guiding, facilitating the same processes that were envisioned now. And again, if the need comes, the board will authorize those changes because the need has arrived for the organization to change its position.
I just have, the sentence that wasn't edited, the next sentence, this approach maintains. I felt like there needed to be some adjustment there based off of the edits from the first sentence. So I wrote, this approach helps to maintain financial stability and prevents over reliance on external waste sources. Just because I feel like that better reflects with the previous sentence.
How do you feel about the word strives? This word strives to maintain financial stability.
Strives, what?
This approach strives to maintain financial stability.
Oh, strives, I see, you're putting that in, instead of helps to, yes, yeah.
Something along the lines that it's not absolute, it's not maintaining this.
Right.
It's
Right,
an effort to
yes,
get to that point.
yes. Yeah. Bruce, do you have any?
Yeah, I recall on occasion Garth's comments at a board meeting, maybe more than one board meeting, that it's a heavy lift to go where we are aspiring. And we've been doing business as usual. And we're at 48%, and I think that supports Garth's comment that unless we make major changes, how do we expect to get to 65, 70, 80? So aspiring to hit 80 seems like we will only make it if we either cut our expenses and services, so we need less revenue, or we have higher tip fees. Are there any other two ways that we can hit 80%?
Well, there's new markets entering into, like, for instance, the gas. So if we find that we can get additional revenues by switching from power production to RNG. So switching from power revenues to a RNG, and that has a X-fold increase in revenues. That would be another source as well. So like going into new business, acquiring new business based on operations we're doing.
Okay, my impression to date, which could be wrong, is that A, it's a volatile market and we could lose as well as we can gain. And B, it's not of the magnitude that would replace what we're talking about. It's like a little tweak if we do more, sell more power, but it's not the silver bullets that are gonna get us from 50 to 70.
Right, and I don't know that we're saying it's the solution, it's another way, another type of category to add to your list, which is going into new markets, expanding additional markets, selling power over the fence, pursuing other options that aren't in the waste.
Okay,
Or doing better things with the waste, doing better things with the resources that can generate revenue. So I would add that to the next category.
all right, so that sounds great. So it's basically increasing our revenue portfolio.
Correct.
And if we had realistic numbers attached to the potential portfolio additions that we can envision now, that would be helpful to let people like me know, are we talking about nibbling around the edges? Or are we talking about a game changer?
Absolutely, and that process is, we're right in the middle of it. Evaluating whether we continue going with power production or switch over to RNG. Also in discussions with Monterey One Water about power sales, which can give us increased revenues because of the flat rate that they're gonna be giving us. Other over the fence opportunities that may exist. So that's going on right now where we're evaluating what is gonna make a big leap in revenues in those departments. So
Okay.
you're right on.
And would a big leap, if it happened, would that take us in your ballpark, just in your gut sense, from 48% to 53% or 48% to 65%? Is it of the larger magnitude or is it of the smaller magnitude?
I would say it's of the small to medium magnitude.
Right, okay, all right. So then it would lessen the need for cuts in services and expenses. But if we were to say we want to get away from external and hit 80%, and we have some portfolio additions that are going to make small to medium changes, we still need to have some significant other changes in cutting expenses and services, right?
Correct. The significant one that you're talking about is 2036 deadline that we've been talking about for, entirety of a year. That's 25%. So, you want significant move, 2036 is that time.
Right.
Right, and we're gonna have to make that decision as an organization. Do we extend out further than 2036 because a need exists? We don't like where our gate rate's going, we don't like some of those items, maybe it's not a 30-year agreement, maybe it's a 5 to 10-year agreement where it still gives us a window of opportunity to decrease that. But instantaneously right now, everybody at this room should understand that the big move is 2036. It's the largest external agreement we have. It represents 25%. That cannot happen any sooner than 2036. We're in an agreement till 2036. The only way out is a 2-year notification period that they would want to exit out. We would have to exercise something sooner than that. So this is that discussion. This is the same that we discussed in the workshop and as we discussed going into the budget. The trend that we're on is 11-year period to 2036, and a plan is in play, and that's a 25% move from the 50% that we're at now. So essentially we'll be short of 75 I would say 74% roughly. But that's a significant move for the organization, and we made the decision that we would like to reserve our right at 2036 on that trash coming in at that cost. It doesn't mean that we would look away if we can improve the earning at that time. Of the cost per ton. The cost per ton is short of $31 today. 2036, I would say that would need to be roughly $60 to $70 a ton, which is a huge improvement. And it would identify another position for the organization, is that we probably wouldn't need the same amount of volume as we increase the rate for external customers. So if we can increase the rate by 50%, that means we would only need 50% of that volume, which gives us more landfill life. But 2036 is the date. We need to execute every year all the way to 2036 so that we can be prepared, whether we're gonna continue to get that sort of volume externally, or is there a desire to get that volume externally? Is there a need for it? Or could the members survive without that external volume at that pace that we're on to get to a gate rate by 2036? That creates the resiliency that we're looking for. That's the big move. There's no way to get early moves out. The early move out is potentially Watsonville, that is opening up their module. That's a potential to lose that sooner than we expected. We haven't planned for it. That's a negative impact for us. The waste connection agreements, if that goes away, that's a negative impact for us because we are not prepared and we're not driving in the driver's seat yet. But as we encroach on 2036, as these items pop up again, we will be in a much better bargaining position to be dependent of regional volume. Yet we have to execute in this 11-year window. We don't execute now, we'll be right back at the table, not in a bargaining position, accepting what we need to continue to offer the services we have today. But essentially, it's a great question. The big move happens in 2036 if it's desired and it's warranted, and the organization can be prepared to be independent of 25% regional contract from our organization.
All right, well, it's more than a question, but I was just getting started.
Okay.
If we were clear on paper, so the public and the board knew the options of how to hit 80%, and I like Kim's question about why 80, why not 75, why not 85, why not 90? But for the purpose of the discussion, 80% serves as a.
So let me jump right in.
I'd rather not, just because we have a big agenda.
I know, but you're asking the question, and 80%, you cannot achieve 100 because you still have contracts going to 2052, still represents 20% of the agreements. So there is no way you can get to 100 before 2052.
Okay, so there's a way we can get to 100 next year by increasing the tipping rates $300,
Yep.
So the tipping fees is the elephant in the room. That can solve whatever formula we want at any time. But how uncomfortable it would be, we want to stay away from that, right?
Yes.
So what I would like at some time in the future is for the board and the public to be educated by staff. What it would take to hit 80%. What are the options? And tipping fees should always be part of the formula to show the pain it will take to achieve those options. And it's possible that the pain of ramping up tip fees between now and 2036 in anticipation might be achievable. If we do the normal tipping fees that we normally do, plus this add-on to get us to where we want to go, maybe it's 5% more every year, maybe it's 10% more every year, but it would only be possible if it was predicated in advance by our philosophy, our vision implementation, to say that we've gone through a public process and we've agreed that it's more important to have 7 generations of landfill so that future generations don't have to figure out something that we have. They have the same that we have, access to, quality landfill. And for that to happen, we want to increase rates to decrease other people's garbage coming so that we have a landfill. And so that pain, and it all gets back to the white paper, because that's supposed to be the living document that explains all this. But anyway, it would be nice to have the best ballpark figures we have of your your portfolio additions that are under consideration, how much they changed this formula, how much they add money and impact to where we want to be in 2036. And that 25%, so for example, the 25% that the 2036 decision means is that what if we just increase tip fee by 25%, so we can do without that? Well, that might be pretty painful. And then if we added but if we could figure that out, and then the portfolio, you said medium to short term, so maybe that's 7%. So 7% plus 25% tip fee increase would be at 72%. 7 plus 25 is 32. Add 32 to the 48 we're at now, and you get 72, something like that. If we had more tip fee, we'd be higher, we'd be closer to 80%. But I just think that we are well served if it's disclosed to everybody what the options are that include tip fee increases and other dollar changes. I think we can use the white paper and maybe append the white paper to say, addendum 2025 under consideration is how do we get to 80%? Because 80% is part of our revised guiding principles. And to get to 80%, here are the options. So Appendix A to this living document would be this discussion we're having now. So to sort of put it in the record as part of our white paper. So the next time they have this discussion, they can go to that and say, we don't have to rehash everything. Let's start with where we left off. They considered all this stuff in 2025. The conclusion was X. And how here we are in 2035 having a similar discussion. Start with the white paper. It's a living document. So that's where I would like to go is the next step is to have the board consider staff presented options. Some are going to be the most painful and some are going to be the least painful. The least painful are going to take in more external garbage and not get to our 80%. And the most painful are going to get to our 80%. But if it's not going to be painful, given Garth's initial guidance, we're never going to get to 80% because it's such a big number. Am I wrong on anything? Am I misunderstanding anything? Because I want to hear if I'm off base.
David, you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first question is why would we have this as a goal? And if we're all in agreement that the why is covered and that we agree on the why question, then I think what you're asking is the how. And I think if the discussion has moved past the why and into the how, everything you're saying right now about what you're challenging, what this document is challenging staff to do, is all fair game. It's worth the effort, it's worth staff's time to come up with the how, do the amendments to the white paper, etc. And I just want to see if we're past the why. Do we agree this is a good strategy? Do we agree that this is the direction to go? And if that's a yes, I think that's the purpose of the guiding principles as a draft document for discussion. If we want to include, if we're not sure that we agree on the why, and we need to know the how in order to answer the why, then we're moving from two different questions. And I just want to bring that up if before we go through a big long effort in the how. So pose that to the table to pick up how you'd like.
Yeah.
I think David makes a good point. If we can accept the why, then we can accept the guiding principles. What Bruce is asking for is really what we would bring again at the next budget period is here's how we achieve those next steps. But we can do it in advance, kind of get feedback on. One of the items that we didn't present in this year's budget was the full gamut of the price increase in year one. And the reason why we didn't bring it was we didn't have no time to communicate that out to the public. If it was going to be a $31, gate rate increase, there was not enough sufficient. Staff knew, that's attending all of the council meetings, giving a notice, giving the public opportunity to speak. We really didn't have that time, but we could do what does it take next year to get there? We can create that pretty simple because it was in one of Garth's tests. That's how we knew it was roughly about $31. It's a lot cheaper if we did it now than we do it 10 years from now. We know that for sure. So we can start setting these scenarios if we agree that the why is answered. I think we can come back to the board and use that as the predicate. Is the why answer? Why do we want to do this? And the why is we want some resiliency in our revenue so that we don't be impacted on our services in the future when regional contracts leave. So we agree on that. That's the purpose. Then we can execute on, here's some methods and some suggestions of how we get there. We've already presented the 11-year method of increases, roughly 5.5% over 11 years, and take us from a $77 a ton to about $118, $121 a ton. But again, there's other influences that are going to derive themselves as we trek this 11-year period. But knowing some of the scenarios that we could take at any given time would be an advantage for the whole organization. So I think you're on the right path. I think it's just pieces that we could introduce right around budget or pre-budget workshop that we had this year is here's the preambles of what we're going to see in this year's budget, and here's some opportunities for us to visualize and see if we can achieve them or not.
Mhm. But I think back to like the white paper and these guiding principles, I think the impetus for a lot of this was recognizing how low these rates are for our regional contracts and sort of being a little surprised at how low those are. And I think that's where Wendy's suggestion to make things a little bit more comparable. So that's another approach is really like we need to start making sure that our contracts work for what we're trying to achieve. And so for me, when I think about that, like I also want to think about how are we increasing revenue in other ways, which is also important. And right, it's not going to be just increasing tip fees, but it's really looking at those contracts as we go and having an approach that we know where we're trying to get to. So when we start to negotiate, and I recognize we don't have the leverage right now to do that. But the more that we can be, push towards this goal with those regional contracts, then as you're saying, we will gain that leverage and we can start to have contracts that fit better with what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and you'll see item 4C will touch on that third scenario of how we're contributing along the way.
Yeah.
I agree with your assessment. I think we're not quite there yet, but we're working towards a stronger position where we bargain.
Yeah.
And we should never bargain exactly where we're at, trying to move the bar as we can, but also recognize the risk if we don't get. I think those are going to be the big challenges for us.
But I do think it's really important what David said, like why, what's the why? Why 80%? Or why, what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve a longer lifespan of our landfill? Because we don't have the foresight to know what's going to happen in 75 years. So that should always be our principle, is to extend the life of our landfill. And again, that's a philosophical question, is how long do we want to extend the landfill, again, the balance without having to completely have the entire thing on the backs of the member agencies. And yeah.
So I think we'll be pulling a rabbit out of the hat if we can make 80% without a lot of pain by increasing external contract rates and the short-term portfolio additions. I've always assumed the reason the external rates are what they are is because if we tried to make them much higher, we would lose the contracts, we wouldn't win the bids. I always thought that our staff did the best they could to have them be as expensive as high as possible and win. Because we didn't win every one. And so to think that in the future we'll be able to increase them substantially and win, I think is pulling the rabbit out of the hat. But maybe. So the why 80, it's arbitrary. We can agree on that. So I think that if you run the numbers for the 80 and gave us a roadmap to get to 80, it would only be a few hours, or it'd be it'd be easy to then give us a 60 and give us a 70. But maybe I'm wrong. But my point is that it would be nice to have a 60, 70, 80, because 60 is much more doable. 70 is getting in the aspirational range, and 80 is very aspirational. So I would think, why not more than 80? Because it's just too aspirational, but maybe I'm being small-minded. But I think that 60, 70, and 80 will give the board, you know, if they're feeling very conservative and uncomfortable making big changes, they'll go for the 60, and that's a big enough change. But part of the 60, 70, 80 analysis should, kind of what you were just saying, it should say each of those would result in this landfill life. And each of those, let's say we went for 60, that means that we wouldn't be able to reconsider 70 or 80 until contract lifetime. You know, if we went with 60 and we got 10-year contracts or 15-year contracts, 60 is going to be it until 10 or 15 years. And then if we want to, we can go 70 or 80 with new contracts. So the consequence of going from 60 or 70 or 80 should be part of that analysis. The consequence of landfill life and how long we're going to be locked in before we can go somewhat higher, more aspirational. Does that make sense? So how much harder would it be to give us a 60, 70, and 80 rather than just an 80 strategy?
I don't think it's gonna be that difficult. Once we figure out what the number does, it's just run from that number, so. But I do wanna present scenarios that are real, right? I don't think we can just get to 60 without knowing the impact, right? So I can't cut that San Jose contract in half and say, oh, well, I only wanna negotiate half of that at a certain rate because I know it represents 25%. That's why we use 80, because 2036, we can go from 50 to 70, right? So we know that for sure.
Why not 75?
Because the contract only has a certain amount of value to it, so and it only has a term, so you cannot cut that in half figuratively, right?
So I
So
thought you said earlier it was 25%.
it is 25%, but it takes us member agency from 50 to the low 70 range, right? Of resiliency. And you wouldn't be able to say that's 60 because the contract represents 25%, right?
Right, so
So
you're saying,
we're looking at the value of the contract and the term of the contract to see where it's moving from 50, right? So 50 is the number now, and we're gonna move. The next contract expiration represents 25%, so how could you do it any less than 25% if it represents 25,
gotcha.
right? And it can't represent more than that because it only represents 25. So this scenario of 60, 70, and 80, hypothetically, we could do it, but the reality of the contract, probably the number should be where it's going to be at. Maybe it's not 80, maybe it's the 74%. Because we know that contract represents 25% of the value. It's absolute, it can't be less, it can't be more.
Right. Yeah,
So I think we hear you, you want a scenario, we'll work on it, but we want it to be as real as possible. You know, saying, I want it to be 90% at 2036. It's gonna come from the gate rate because that value only represents 25, and to get to 90 would require another 15. So we'll work on the scenario, but I really wanted to give from contract expiration of where we're going to be at. So if the next big position is 2036, the number is gonna be probably between 70 and 75% once we run the math.
okay, what I'm thinking now, I think what I was thinking earlier is that if by 2036, we need to replace 25% to keep us where we are, right? That's not gonna get us to 70, that's just gonna keep us where we are. We have it now. Right? So if we say no to the 25%, that means we gotta find 25% somewhere else.
No. Cause we're achieving that 25% right now through rate increases. So the pathway is gate rate increases, some attributes that we talked about right now to 2036, but it's still 25%.
Well, when you were saying earlier, if we stop the contract, we lose 25%. That's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah.
So if we aspire to a certain number and we know that by 2036, we're gonna lose 25% if we stop the contract, don't renew it. We could say, to your point of halfway, or how do you get half of that? We could say, but between now and then, we're gonna try to line up other contracts that might represent 12.5% instead of 25%. That would be our strategy. So if we wanted to hit 60%, we just wouldn't renew that 25% contract, but we would seek other contracts that would bring in what we needed to get to 60%, or 70%, or 80%.
Yeah, but the problem with hypothetically going to seek a contract for a percentage is the same problem we run into the city of Salinas. Is we would love to have them as a customer that represents 25%, yet they're not our customer, and that's been an attribute for 20 years. So we're relying on a potential contract rather than the reality of a contract going away and the reality of us putting dollars into our tip fee. Those are absolute, those are going to happen. The going to get a contract relies on a business partner and a partner that wants to be invoked in, and someone that we can negotiate a deal on, which if we just looked at the city of Salinas, that deal's been in play for 20 years and we haven't realized that agreement. That's the concern with, well, we can go ahead and find 10% contract. Could we? Is the question. And do we want to operate on a philosophy that's not fixed? The philosophy that we're on right now is fixed through gate rate, through improvements in the operation, and making that hard decision in 2036. Do we need to make it? You know, it's gonna depend how well we do every year up to that point. We're not in that position yet. But it's early on, and I know you want to see further out ahead, but I think 11 years is far enough, because I can't twist the figures until we realize them. So the wins in the operation gotta occur. The contracts gotta, we gotta be doing enough before the contracts expire. At the time, I would say 3 years, 4 years out, you may want to see some other attributes of what it could be at that time, because you'll have realized 7 or 8 years of gain and momentum in the position that we want to have to bargain contracts. So I hear you. I think we can create the scenario for you, but I do not recommend to the board or to the members that we put in a presumption we can go get 10% agreement with just anybody, because it may not happen. And that's a concern.
Can I add just a little bit?
Sure.
I think those absolutes that Felipe's referring to are what can live in this policy, but it doesn't dictate that those agreements can't also be like frosting on the cake. You know, you can have this rate policy that dictates certain decisions, CPI increases to make up for the San Jose contract. But in addition, the landfill capacity and service area portion of this allows for favorable contracts. Contracts from outside agencies at favorable rates. So both can be true. And I think that's that flexibility is in here in both sections.
All right, Felipe, maybe think about something I hadn't thought about. It sounds like what you're saying is, well, let me just say this, San Jose contract expires. Are you confident that if we wanted to, they would just go for another 15 years? Or is that a question mark?
It's not a question mark. I think they would favorably would want that same rate that they have today and would sign the paper right instantaneously. You know,
And what if we wanted more rate, higher rate, then what? Then it's a question mark?
It's not a question mark. Jay already, me and Jay work together on performing an analysis of what's going on in the market in San Jose. So we're looking at other contracts owned by other haulers, private and public, of what's occurring and when they're expiring. So we can start forecasting, oh, Capitola is gonna expire in 27. Oh, Peninsula cities are expiring in 2030. So these are big indicators for me that those people are looking for new contracts which require disposal agreements.
Well,
Or
that's what I was saying earlier, is that if we have a plan that in 11 years we want to be somewhere, and to be at 60 or 70, you would need to find new contracts. That
but
gives us-
you don't need to. Under the philosophy and the pathway that we're going right now, you gain 25% at 2036.
Yeah, I'm just seeing options, because earlier you said we can't just ditch the 25% and replace it magically with other contracts. But I'm seeing that you're locked in till 2036.
Correct.
starting next year, 2 years, 3 years from now, we can pick up other contracts. So that when we let go of the 25%, we'd still be online for our vision. I'm just seeing options and want the staff to present those options to 60, 70, 80. Until you told me that 60 wasn't even feasible, but now I'm thinking it's feasible again. Because it just would require sort of creative realism in getting certain contracts that add up to 60 or 70. And looking forward, looking ahead to getting rid of the 25 and not being sunk by it.
Yeah, but we're not in the bargaining position to bargain for a better rate today. That's the challenge, is if we wanted to go bargain for a better rate today, could we give a strong position when we're competing against others in a rate industry? So I don't think that your position on just going to get other contracts, the reason why we were looking at being independent was to gain that landfill life back. So we're pushing to get landfill life back, and then I go and bargain other contracts. It's kind of this squishing the desire to have landfill life.
Well, not if by a certain date we'll be at, we'll be at 15% external instead of 48%. We're not saying we're at 52, we're at 52 right now. So if you kept some contracts because you're getting new ones and you let go of some of the gorillas, then maybe you're not at 52, you're at 35. And maybe that gets us to, or you're at 25, whatever. I mean, whatever the board wants to do, you can get there with rearranging contracts. And I'm concerned with what you said, that today we can't get out there and get a better rate. How do we expect that? I don't know how we're gonna get better rates. We've been talking today, and Wendy is talking about getting better rates. But if we try to get better rates and we lose the contracts or we lose the bids, then I don't know.
Today, we need the revenue. In 2036, we may not need the revenue. And that's the difference in position of bargaining your landfill space at a cost, right? And I think that's what makes the difference of today and 2036 is your position on landfill space and what you need is more resilient in 2036 than it is in 2025. David, go ahead.
The core question is, how much dependency do you want to have on outside contracts? And every time we're gonna go out and get contracts, you're rolling the dice. There's no guarantee that somebody's not gonna undercut your rate. Also, there's other landfills which are expanding, which are coming online. The San Jose tons are driving past landfill to get here. So like keep that all is there. The market has a say also. So I think the math exercise can be done. Just also need to take it with a lot of uncertainty of, can that be achieved? Can we negotiate it? And that's where you end up in the dependency world, is you need to make it happen. You have to get those tons, and you're gonna end up with a very low rate because a region needs it. That's not a good bargaining position to be in. You wanna have a stronger basis to then build that bargaining position. So I mean, it all can happen on paper, but when it hits reality in the next 11 years, whether we can achieve this fine detail or, but the big decision I see is, how much dependency do we want to have on outside contracts? If that number is, slide that scale around, but we're gonna have to make, if we say it's less than 100, we have to be out there. We have to be getting contracts, or else we lose service. We'll have to reduce services if we can't get those contracts. And that's really the end goal of this whole thing.
The end goal is what? Not to lose services.
The end goal is of the board's decision on whether they want to be dependent on outside funds or not, and how we want to slide that. 20%, then you have. You 20% contracts and
Percent and have velocity would be, you have to, services, because then people are gonna say, well, what are we spending our money on? Recycling, who cares? This, who cares? This, who cares? I care. Discussion, and 100%. First, that's gonna be,
You could still go for other contracts, but those from a position of gate rate. It have these projects coming up. Can we negotiate to this expand this new service you made instead of or the San Jose tons out? Two-year time frame.
Guideline, I sort of feel like this is what dictates our behavior, right? This is what's telling us what we're gonna do. And when I read this, this is not telling me that we're gonna be super aggressive in going out and seeking more contracts, right? Because we're trying to increase that percentage, which I think is fair. But I think we're also like, if a contract comes our way, we wanna try and make it as financially feasible for us as possible, so that we don't have to keep increasing those tip fees, so it's a balance of like, how much do we need to increase tip fees? How much do we need to increase our additional revenue in other places, while also maintaining those contracts in a way that we aren't in financial harm, so.
Or inflating the gate rate
Right.
at a rapid rate, right?
Right.
If you lose them before desired and you didn't plan for them, and I think that's the challenge for us in this 11-year period, is the challenge of repairing something that could have been done at the inception of the agreement, right? If we would methodically said, hey, this is gonna go for 30 years, we need to have this sort of gate rate increase to keep, you would have 30 years to do that, rather than 11 years. And with that one agreement, we figured out we had others that are gonna fall into that mix, the Waste Connections, Watsonville, they fall before 2036, so we have to anticipate those revenues falling off. 2052, we have to measure those falling off. We'll also have to, the 2036, we may decide at that time that that's when we go to 100, right? Because we'll be in that position where we can say, if you want to bring volume here, it's $90, and we won't take any less than that. And we know the value in $90 is, for a 10-year period, it could be, 20 years of landfill life. So we can say, man, we'll keep our 20 years of landfill life because you don't want to give us the rate we want to pay. Those stronger positions will exist further down the line. Except, right now we're at the beginning of it. We haven't gained that position yet, but we're desiring to gain that position. I think that's where the victories are going to come into play. But I hear you loud and clear. We'll work on some options to present to the board. Go ahead, Jay.
Today. The reason they are coming here is because our rate plus the trucking cost is less. As our rates go up, we get closer to those landfills are, and at risk of losing the volume. Those customers are driving by landfills that have triple digits gate rates today. The reason they are coming here is because our rate plus the trucking cost is less. As our rates go up, we get closer to those landfills are, and at risk of losing the volume.
Yeah, and I think, San Jose right now is interested in expanding from 2036. But, I gotta get more information before I deliver any more messages around that. I would really like to prepare the board for, what is the desire. I think we have a few options yet. We haven't developed those yet, but they're, again, in a realm where I wish this discussion was happening 2033 and 34, because I know the 2-year impact is a lot less severe than a 9-year or an 8-year impact. So I think if we lose those agreements pre-nup of 2036, we go into a spiral. We got to figure out where that impact's going to be at.
the other ones, not that.
Yeah, and so we'll create some models for you. I hear you on wanting to see what that looks like. But I agree, if the desire of the board is to have landfill life, then at some point we get to 100%. And, to David's option, we want to build something. Let's enter into a 5-year term. It's worth about 4 or 5 million, covers the $4 million cost to the infrastructure. And we can continue to just have them for the need rather than 30, 40 years. And we have to have them because our services will be rendered if we don't. And that's kind of the position I'm taking. Pretty excited here. Go ahead, David.
One more point to make, just to bring it to, the impact of today, we also have these these reserves we want to fund, these other liabilities that we want to fund. So every step we take in this time period to get up to build the strength also is feeding those, then we have that San Jose tonnage revenue, feeding some of these other liabilities or reserves that we want to make. This is a very heavily capital expenses in this industry are very high. You have to build a big bucket to draw from right when you need it, when you need to develop a landfill, when you need to move a truck yard, when you need to develop a compost yard. And so not only does the day-to-day expenses, covering those build strength, but then these outside contracts start building that capital reserve fund, start building these long-term liabilities, pension liabilities, et cetera, which we all recognize from the discussions are present here as well.
That's why we love money.
You
That's
guys.
why we love Gar.
So, does that help?
Yes, honestly, yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what we
Okay.
want, right?
Yeah, the mutual understanding and good discussion and why
Yeah.
it has to be beat up, like.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
point. So I appreciate all the
Sure.
comments.
Thank you for taking time. Okay, great. Is there, I'm assuming no one online wants to comment on this item.
There are no comments on mine.
Okay. All right, update on our electrical connection projects.
Thank you. ReGen has been endeavoring to connect its electrical power generation to Monterey One Water. Monterey One Water has a water purification system that is very energy intense. And ReGen is producing power that can be sold over the fence. So over the past few years, Guy was working on a project to connect a power line to the wastewater treatment plant, Pure Water Monterey treatment facility. And that project was slated for construction completion in October
Of 2025.
of this year. However, we received notice from Monterey One Water that they are not ready for us to make that final connection and connect the electrical power. They had a catastrophic failure of one of their pieces of equipment that they retrofitted, and they're not sure it can take that connection to take our power. They have a project that's gonna be replacing that switchgear and replacing that equipment. That isn't due to be completed until probably June or July of next year. So this update is to inform the finance committee that the project will continue to October, but it will end at the fence. It won't be making that final connection over to M1W. M1W's, we've made had some discussions, and M1W will take over in their project, making that final connection and actually landing the cables on their side. So what we started getting word of this during the budget preparation period. And we did not include it in our financial revenue projections because we saw the writing on the wall that it was in question. And we didn't want to bank on getting that revenue from M1W. So the budget is fine, but we do have a project that's going to be sitting ready to make the connection until they finish their construction on their side of the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the update. We're also really talking to them about the power purchase agreement and how all the math is gonna work from a standpoint of the electrons and how they work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got time to do that now.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit to it. I was pretty excited by the email, not that they were extending, but that they had interest in revisiting the PPA, which was a big interest of ours. We're getting support from Deborah's team, Josh and Heather, I believe, are helping us on that PPA. So we'll start identifying items that we want to come together with Monterey One Water to discuss. That's probably gonna be the rate per kilowatt. That's gonna be the term of the agreement. Would be also an item that we're very concerned about is, is the term long enough to cover our expenses for building, the long connection? If on your way out, you guys take this kind of quick glance at, the landfill to gas facility that we have out there, you'll see a bunch of, pallets and boxes on the outside. That's our end of the line, commitment to getting it built. So we're almost, there, as David mentioned, roughly by October, we'll be prepared for it. We'll wait, but I think PPA, the announcement that they were willing to come to the table, revisit and make sure that the market was appropriate for both entities was sigh of relief. So I'm pretty excited about that. And we'll start working on it, and then we'll come back and report to the board at the time that we feel that we've right-sized the PPA and we want to move forward with amending it. So I'm pretty excited about that.
All right, sounds good.
So my overall question is, how does this affect the budget? But my specific question is, how does the budget we passed, what was in it in anticipation of when this might start to come online? So, yeah, so how does it impact our budget, if at all?
Not at all. We didn't include no revenue from it because we understood that the infrastructure that exists today may not be able to withstand the connection going over. And so to David's point, the writing was on the wall for us that we could expect some interruption. We knew it wasn't gonna happen right in October. We felt it was gonna happen maybe first quarter. Sounds like second quarter of next year, so we didn't budget anything. If we do get it, it'll be all upside to the bottom line.
And they have an interest in getting it done because they're gonna be saving money, so service the bill.
Yeah.
As soon as they have that gear.
Yeah, we did talk about, well, can we do a temporary connection? Can we go around and try to make something work? And the expenses to make that happen didn't really match the benefit for either organization. And so it made sense to wait.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I agree.
We waited all this time, man, a couple more
Yeah,
months.
I know. Yeah,
Probably
please
won't put
wait.
us to rest yet, but we're pretty excited that, we can finally say that we're gonna distribute power. And I think the other attribute of the PPA is we get a fixed number all the time and relevance to the market's going up and down. Yesterday I was in the LFG and, Tom's figuring out the market and he said, I'm probably gonna shut down engines. Right, because it was costing us about, $30 an hour, right? For providing power, it didn't make any sense for us to do that, so why continue to do it?
Right.
We're figuring it out, we're gonna be much improved in the LFG department.
In that power purchase agreement, have we talked about like backup for them, like if we aren't able to supply power to them?
Yeah, that capability will exist. They
Okay.
will get power from PG&E.
Okay,
So it's just a switch that needs to be thrown, and that's how they're getting power now.
yeah,
And we're just adding another infeed to their.
So they're diversifying their power, they wanna provide power from in-house, from over the fence, from us.
okay,
So they're looking,
so they'll have other,
they're looking for resources to be below market, but also realize that they may have to go back to the market when we have shutdowns. Yeah.
okay. Great. All right, move on to the update on the compost project.
The compost project really kicked off at the beginning of the year as far as design and procurement of equipment. Right now, we're about a month behind where we wanted to be at this time to maybe be able to meet the Cower Cycle grant fund payments and get everything up and running by the end of the year. We will be bringing a construction contract to the board. We're thinking it's gonna happen in August. I know we do have that as a meeting to be canceled if there's nothing on it, but this is a really important project for the timeline that we get this contract approved. I expect to go out to bid for the project in about 2 weeks. Have that bid on the street, which will give a month bid period before we get the results and then put it into the board packet and then have you all review it and execute it. So that's pretty much an update. Hope you didn't have anything planned for August, but it's really important for us to get this through. So that's,
Can you summarize the compost project?
yes, the compost project is a covered area, moving from a static windrow composting to covered area to static pile process. It's a different technology that is being used to improve the throughput, improve the amount of reduce the amount of time that it has to stay in process, make the bugs happy by giving them oxygen to biodegrade the organics and reduce some of the operational impacts that facility has,
Such as odors.
such as odors.
It's funny how you call that.
Well, there's dust, a tremendous amount of dust when we're turning over the piles that is being blown, so erosion is taking effect at the same time.
Smelling dust is easier to understand than operational impacts. It's engineering, you know.
It's a catch-all phrase.
And so I'm assuming Keith Day is fine with where you're at with things.
I'm sorry.
Keith Day, you're.
Keith Day is a great partner. He's been on all the design meetings. He has a very vested interest in making sure we're getting the project
Yeah,
completed. So he's
Yeah.
been a great partner.
good.
Yeah, while we're giving attributes, I'd like to thank David and Katie. They've taken on a big aspect of this project that was left uncompleted, so they had to gain awareness, and I think their partnership with Keith is showing. We went from one design to a totally different design because of that, and we're saving money because of it as well. So really nice work, David. We appreciate your efforts, sir.
Awesome. All right. Okay, we'll move on to 4E, discuss the waste connections agreements.
All right, so here's where I said we might have some conflict of emotions yet. Here's an agreement that is set to expire March 30th of 2026. So we have a remaining time. They do have an interest to extend their agreement for 5 more years. San Benito has not made a decision on whether they're gonna allow a landfill expansion at the John Smith landfill. They're also not sure whether they will develop or build a transfer station so that they would not allow an expansion. So they have not made a determination on which pathway they would achieve. Helen and I were able to meet with Waste Connections, and we have a tenant agreement on the table, and there was some items that we wanted to make sure that we were protecting our risk on, and one of them, the first one was 5-year full term. So we wanted a 5-year full term with no early outs, no exiting the agreement, which is a change from the last agreement. Again, I think we're learning some of those attributes that we desire through other agreements that when we look at new ones we've learned. And so this is one of the first items that we negotiated back and forth on. They did want to exercise an early out, but we felt, the term is already short and you're already getting a favorable deal. And we feel we're doing San Benito County a favor for extending the term of the agreement. So they tentatively agreed to the no early out, and the contract would expire June 30th of 2030. Extending it to expire at the end of the fiscal year rather than one whole quarter short. So we were able to squeeze that in there. They tentatively agreed to that. The other item that we talked about was a no increase on CPI. I think we learned that CPI at lower rates really don't move as fast as they would for a full rate, like our gate rate. When we increased by 5%, it was roughly $4 increase. So we really wanted to get a fixed number, and we got them to agree to a fixed rate annually every year, which was, I believe, a win for us. They're current rate, going into this fiscal year was $37.50. I got a 4.1% increase to the gate rate, which took up to today's rate, which is $38.40. So you can see it was only a 90 cent increase when we use CPI. Who we were competing against, we were competing against a few landfills that are in the desired area. I believe Watsonville is competition now. They have a cell that space. You also have Merced County Waste Authority, which is run by Billy Wright. They run the operation. They're at $43 a ton. That was the most severe competition that I've seen on posted gate rates, and just really looking at the authority of how much they would reduce their rate as well. If approached, I also recognize that there was challenges with that destination, and that challenge was Pacheco Pass. You got to go up and over to get there. Relatively about the same amount of time, but I would say maintenance would be inflated just because the challenge on the vehicle going up and down, whether it's braking systems or engine systems, those vehicles probably would not last their desired lifetime. So those were attributes that we took in. The tentative agreement that we had on there was to increase them by just a little bit over 8%. Would get them to year one in 2026. Next year, March, the April 1st of next year, they would go from $38.40 to $41 a ton for year one. Year two, a $2 increment, taking them to 43. Year three, taking them to 45. Year four, taking them to 47. And year five would be taking them to 49. A fixed rate increase. They tentatively agree to those amounts. And one item to recognize, year five at $49 a ton only exists for 6 months. Because of the rate change and their expiration finishes June 30th of the middle of the year. So if they went through the end of the year, you would get a full year of $49 a ton. You're only going to realize 6 months of that.
Is there a like a minimum amount of waste that we would require them to bring? Because I feel like we have this.
It's a great question. The volume was about 70,000 tons. It was like 69,000 tons. We did put an indicator for them that we would weren't receiving the same amount of volume, and anything above a 10% increase in the volume would be charged at the gate rate. So they know they have that amount plus 10% and no more. So we're not giving, they couldn't go and find another contract somewhere else and bring us another 30,000 tons at the same cost. They would have to renegotiate. It's only for the existing volume trend plus 10%.
What if they go below that?
They would still be fine. We did not incorporate an obligation of put or pay for the amount. We believe they'll be exceeding the amount.
Okay.
And that's why we put that 10% ceiling on that, just room for growth. And they're not receiving volume from externally, so it is solely coming from San Benito. So they couldn't receive any material even if they wanted to because of the ordinance they have in play on the 15 years left of landfill life. So we don't believe they're gonna be sending us any other material and less of it as well.
Okay.
So for me, I have no comments about change or anything like that. But for me, this is a good example of me and maybe other people trying to understand why we don't have higher rates. And it's because if we do, we don't get the bid, we don't win the bid. So I'm trying to understand Wendy's comment, and all board members, we want more, right? And the public would want us to get more because we charge more for our district members than we do this. So we're giving a discount to external garbage, like why would we do that? Because we want the money. Anyway, so when Wendy said in her message to you that she was talking about make sure that the rates are as high as they can be for external partners. So how does her thinking apply to this situation? Do we say we'd like to, but we can't? Or do we say something else?
I would say that we're not quite yet in that bargaining position, and we hadn't prepared for the discontinuance of this agreement. So if we didn't renew an agreement, we would be looking at what is that increase for this $2.5 million roughly of revenue that's coming in without creating a method to get out, right?
What's the gate increase to compensate?
I agree. So this year, when we come around in the budget time, you'll see another number, which will be this number, is we have a 5-year agreement left on term, and we've now got to start applying. We probably will not get extension in 2030. Waste Connection believes that they're gonna get their landfill extension, or San Benito County will create the transfer station. So the need will not exist after 2030. This is the time for us to say, what does that mean for us for the next 5 years, just under that 2.5 million? We've already done it for the rest of it, which is San Jose 2036. So two different trajectories. This one will be added going into next year's budget to realize we have it, and now we get 5 years to do what David said. We can continue to put money into our reserves, pay off our bond assessments. We can do different things with those dollars, but if we just lose them right away, it's an instantaneous increase, right? So this one is, we're quite not there yet. If we were further down the line, then we can take a stronger position on what Wendy's saying is the value needs to be here. We recognize they're only using one area of our operation. We recognize that it's a certain amount of volume. We recognize it's for a term. What does 5 years mean to landfill life under this volume, right? I think those are the discussions we want to have. The need exists today, and I would go on the dais and say the need exists today to have this agreement as we work to ready the organization to off-ramp it in 2030.
Thank you.
You're
It would be good at the board meeting to say, if you, for whatever reason, don't want to go another 5 years, here's how much rates will need to increase if it was just a one-to-one replacement,
Yep.
or you have to cut somewhere.
Mhm.
And we don't need to go down those details that people don't want that pain at the board level. So it'd kind of be a no-brainer if it's, oh, no, we don't want to increase rates $10.
Yeah, we already increased it for, right? Yeah, so you're exactly
Because
right.
you're talking March 2026, so that's in our current budget cycle.
Yes, yes.
Can I add a little color to Wendy's comment, just to make sure we're all clear on what her intention was? The notes that I have say that as it relates to the guiding principles, she recommended adding a sentence that say, efforts shall be made to maintain member rates at competitive level to contract rates. And staff flipped that on its head, because as the current guiding principles rate section was being developed, those two things were at odds with each other. So I think we were trying to savor the spirit of her comments in that those two rates, member and contract rates, should be comparable, but it's which one tries to meet the other is where we flipped it on its head.
You flipped it on its head by doing what?
So her comment was that member rates should be competitive to contract rates. And the guiding principles document said the other, that contract rates should be negotiated comparable to member rates.
Yeah, I
I don't know how much of a difference that makes.
makes none to me, because I just think of them as, they need to be equal.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
And to be equal, we probably want to raise the external rates.
and that's exactly what we put into the guiding principles, because we thought that savored the spirit of the rest of the guiding principles and the trajectory that we heard the board going in.
Yeah,
So
I
this
think,
very next contract, we're really not gonna increase the rates that much. But maybe it is, maybe the up to $49 for that last few months,
Yeah.
and in getting to $49 is getting closer to, so maybe we are achieving Wendy's goal and winning a contract.
yeah, and I think really what for the staff was, we're really working on those external contracts to get to member agency rates. We're not working it backward. We're not working the rate from 80 to 75 to 65 to get to the external rate. We're working it in the opposite direction. We're going to those contracts and trying to get them to the gate rate.
And over time, I forget, but I thought that the external rates were so cheap because they don't have all the services tied to them. But maybe that's different than the gate rate. Maybe the gate rate doesn't have any services tied to it either.
And it has all the services tied to
Okay,
them.
all
Yeah.
right. So I think I forget as a board member that it's not just dollar, it's dollar for these services.
Yeah.
$2 for all of these services. And so that should be, I guess remind it to the board.
Yep.
What they're not getting at 49
Mhm.
max, and what the gate people are getting at whatever, what is it, 80? What's the gate rate?
80.
Just as of today.
Approximately.
Yesterday.
But 81, you get 16 things, at 49 max, you get one thing, that helps.
Was your idea of going 41 just because it was just below Merced's, right?
Yes, I knew there was bargaining room there with Merced to still bargain below that number. And the increase, we shot for 10% first, so it was like 41 and some change.
Mhm.
And kind of going back and forth, and that's where the fixed number came in, and we felt like $2 every year was gonna be whatever CPI was gonna be at that lower rate.
Mhm.
$2 really brings them in above close to 5%. It's about 4.5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And just for grins, is it possible that Merced or some other competitor would start out higher, but have smaller increases? So that somewhere near the middle of 5 years, we would no longer be
They could
the
have,
lowest, so we might lose anyway.
they could have, yeah, they could have. I know that we've had the relationship, so their trucking and everything is set up to come here. So just flipping the page for them could cause nuance for them. I wanted to be right at 43. But I also knew the risk of not getting them. It was a lot of gambling, and I
To go up to 49.
yeah.
Mhm. But I like that it's fixed 5 years.
Yeah, and this year was a shock for us. The CPI was 1.5. We were lucky that this CPI wound up being a month earlier than the one we used for our salaries. It was 4.1% for this increase here, when I think the salary came in at 1.3 in April. Yeah, it was very low. So we were excited by the increase, but you still only see that it moved 90 cents. So getting $2 every year increment was double, twofold. Yeah.
Good.
Last year, we looked at a proposal to ship construction demolition material to San Jose. The trucking cost was $15 per ton.
So you add 15 on top of that. It's kind of what their disposal component is Jay's, and identifying the two go hand in hand to compete with other gate rates, right? So anywhere they had to travel, they can go maybe Morgan Hill, which would be the shortest route. Then they can reduce their trucking rate and really negotiate with someone else too. They're really trying to get those two components together to get their value of their expense. Yeah.
I like the use of the word comparable in the policy because it's flexible enough to reflect some of the things like that Jay has brought forward on transportation costs and things where it's lower for members than
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
What's lower for members?
Transportation costs.
Yeah, and I think we're excited with this because we got a TA, and we also know that, again, I think Watsonville's in business right now, would be looking for customers. That's the longer we defer it, the more opportunities to them to find a different agreement down the line. So I'm excited that we could bring this to board and get it locked in for the next 5 years and continue our plan without a second interruption in the second year of the plan.
And you probably don't have any idea of what sort of rate they would charge
Who?
Watsonville.
When we look at, you have to look at operational costs. It's Jay's really moved the needle. David called it a game changer, and we're looking at cost per tons on our different operations to get a value of a cost per ton. And if they're only doing landfill there, I would say their fill cost would probably be between $15 and $20 a ton. So anything above that is to the bottom line. So they could be down there. Our cost, when we look at it, and it's not done yet, but when we took a glance at it, I would say it's around 15% or $15 a ton to process 1 ton of landfill garbage. That's kind of where Bill was guiding us last year. So we still continue to work on the methodology. There are some that are inflated because costs that really they live in admin, but they could live standalone. Amortizing is one of those costs that lives in and inflates the admin cost per ton. So we take all the departments, put a cost per ton to each of them, and then we get a total cost per ton at the gate. We're getting very good at how we're applying math and science to the work that we're performing here, so we're getting close to it. And I think that Watsonville could charge $30 a ton and make money. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Appreciate that. So when will that be finalized?
We will be bringing it in July.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, we'll bring it in
Okay.
July.
okay, good. All right, with that, general manager communications.
Just a comment that you heard already is we do plan on having the August board meeting. And that is for one of the project items that David has pending, so the need exists because we don't have time to waste and we want to execute. And we are not sure on the finance and the personnel committee. We're gonna look to avoid those in August and only bring David's item because that is the need right now for the organization.
All right.
Yeah, and we beat him up over the last week, so he's got it enough already. We're bringing it to the board. There's no chance that we're bringing it in August. So we'll have
The quickest.
Yes,
Yeah.
the quickest.
And I think what we will see is Ida distributing that we have a forum for that meeting, right?
Yeah.
Because we did expect to be out on August, but we'll send an early notification to make sure that we have 5 people here to make the forum for it.
Yeah. We could do it.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Important. All
And
right.
with all these wonderful topics, we still have 3 minutes left.
I know, look at us. Good. Any future agenda items? Anyone, please? Yes.
I'm not sure if it's, I guess it's this, it's not personnel, but, the white paper is supposed to be a living document. Probably getting on a year now. Who knows, how it reads or if there's anything new. But so, future agenda item, white paper review for potential update. Maybe 0, but at least we review it. Kind of supports this concept of it being a living document. It's not dead.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
Yeah, I think my paper was in personnel. It was one of those items that we brought both personnel and,
Yeah, it seems, I know it
Finance.
came to finance.
but because it doesn't really do too much financial stuff, we would use it in personnel and then bring it back to the board. Is that okay?
Oh, about the finances, I thought it was rates versus landfill versus, what was the third thing? Anyway, yeah, it was raise the rates, save the landfill, don't take in outside money, save the landfill.
I'll defer this one to council. I know, council and I had discussion around bringing the same item to two committees. And so we would want it to live
In one or the other.
in one or the other.
Got it. I'll let you guys decide.
Sounds good. It'll come to the full board anyway,
Yeah,
so
yes.
everybody will have the same opportunity to say, is there more to add or is there a desire to add at this time? It'll come preliminary. Here's the desire, just take a look at it, we'll issue it out. Get any feedback, and if not, then we'll bring it to board and say, we didn't have no feedback at this time, or we had X feedback, and then we can make accommodations and changes.
So just note, if you send it to personnel, it'll be very quick. If you send it here, it will have a lot of discussion.
You've been heard, all right, you've been heard.
And if it goes to personnel, it'll have more discussion at the full board and not very much the committee meeting. Right?
So make your choice. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll adjourn 10:29. Yeah.